Welcome to another episode of Geek Bros Talk. I'm your host, Possibilities. This is my co-host, C64. And as you know, we are the Geek Brothers. and I mean, at this point, I think you guys should be used to our names by now, hopefully. Before we used to have a different name for every episode, but that kind of got a bit cumbersome in terms of not being able to find enough names, and I think maybe just got a little bit lazy. Nah, just kidding.
It's pretty hard. It's pretty difficult to do that.
It is difficult to find a lot of brothers and kind of like geek culture. I mean, it's there, but anyways, so welcome back. And for today's episode, we have a few interesting topics for you guys. So today we're going to be talking first about the Bose wireless headphone fiasco. So essentially here, Bose is a pretty popular audio maker. They kind of market themselves in a premium end, but in terms of, I guess, like qualities and components, it's maybe not quite as there. So they do upsell just because of their brand recognition alone, which is fine. It's common. Like you take a look at, Beats by Dre, same thing, pretty much, kind of like that same area. Anyways, the fiasco is that they have these wireless headphones, and I want to say, and maybe you know a little bit more about this, but they connect to one of your phone's apps, right? And that app was recording what you listen to and kind of like sending that data usage without your permission, and then I think selling it eventually, right? Selling that info to someone else. So that's pretty crazy, and I mean, we're kind of always talking about lots of privacy concerns going forward because we want you guys as users to be aware of the things that are happening around us, because it is very easy to fall into the trap of just giving away all your information. And at the moment, it may not have any repercussions because it doesn't affect us directly, but down the line, it will a little bit. And it's always just good to know your rights because, the more you know about it, the more aware you're about it, and the more you can kind of, be for or against it if you really want to. And it's just a lot better for us. So I guess like these bigger companies have to be more aware too, and kind of like sharing our information, and like, I don't know, it gives them less control, right? Which is always a good thing, because as consumers, we always want to be in control of what we do, what we purchase, as much as we can.
Yeah, as much as we can. That's a nice caveat.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a fine line between you need to give them this information, but you also need to be able to retain, some of that power as well.
Yes.
Anyways, so recapping, Bose wireless headphones. Secretly recording your usage data and then selling it to third parties, I believe. Then the second topic we're going to talk about is a little bit more about keyboards, something very near and dear to me. Just some cool stuff that I've been into lately. And as a hobby, it's kind of weird. I mean, I'm going down a rabbit hole. At first I bought one keyboard and like, okay, this is it. This is all I need.
Yeah.
And then I bought a second keyboard, a third keyboard, a fourth keyboard. I'm spending like a ridiculous amount of money on it. Or normally I'm pretty stubborn in spending money on like computer parts. Like keyboards, sometimes I don't even bat an eye. Like I need that like right now. So I'm gonna be talking some more about my latest acquisitions. I don't have them on me right now, but I can talk about why I'm pretty excited for that. And maybe you guys can get into it too. It's a really cool hobby, really cool community. So, and then the last thing we're gonna talk about is a bit about health and kind of just like health and eating habits. I mean, as geeks, normally we get a pretty bad rep for eating terribly, and sometimes it is true. But I think you and I have been seeing a lot more trends where people are trying to be more conscious about it, and maybe it's not just geeks, but kind of just like the populace as a general. But it is, I think, a pretty good topic to discuss. And these are lifestyle changes that we've made for a very good reason. Not just because not just because we wanted to, or like, oh, we need to look good or anything. When your health is like a core essential of who you are, it's a pretty good reason to have it, be healthy and as supported,
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, we're gonna go ahead and get started off with the Bose topic. So I know I gave a pretty thorough overview of it already, but I know you read the article, so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. So I'm not going to add too much more to what my brother said, but basically a person in Illinois, their name is Zach. They actually sued Bose because of the fact that whenever you do download the Bose app, as my brother mentioned, I'm not sure how he found out. Okay, it doesn't name that specifically in the lawsuit that I recall, but they
It's
are,
pretty interesting though. I mean, like as a tech person, I mean,
yeah,
because normally that stuff is just happening in the background, right? And like, how would you ever notice like
yeah, you
this specific data is being sent to someone else and
exactly,
actually being sold?
yeah, and
Yeah.
but it makes a lot of sense, because we're so dependent, or we heavily use our devices so much, especially now that things are becoming more wireless, right? I mean, there's data being transmitted all the time, so I don't think that the majority of people, even like super geeks, there's no way that you can know how it's working underneath. Like you just can't. You kind of have an idea, but
Mhm.
that would make sense to me. Now if you are on something like a streaming service, like Spotify or iTunes or Google, Music or anything like that, you get it that they know what you're listening to. But in this case, you bought a set of wireless earphones. I'm pretty sure it's
Which is
wireless.
essentially, so let's make a distinction between that. That's
Mm-hmm.
software, right? When you use software, you kind of like play into that, like, okay, well, they're probably gonna know what I do because it
Exactly.
just makes a lot more sense. But this is hardware, so I mean,
Yeah.
you want the headphones mostly for hardware. I mean, yes, you're downloading the software, but it's kind of like the primary purpose is just for actual hardware
Exactly. And
usage.
then
Yeah.
that's why, I mean, I'm like, as much as I can, I'm gonna try to remain quote unquote old school. I can't believe I'm saying wired headphones are old school. I don't really want to go towards the wireless stuff yet,
Hmm.
because I know there's data that has to be transmitted and that's available in the open. And then
Hmm.
more and more, as you've probably seen it now, more and more of our devices now, they have an app that go along with it. Like, why would you need an app for headphones? I mean, it's like things like that. It's not as simple
Yeah.
as it is anymore. And so that would make sense that could occur. I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how they found out. And this is like something that's already been happening a lot with consumer products in terms of stuff that you wouldn't really think about, and things like your smart TV. Vizio had they filed I'm sorry, they were sued, and they
Hmm.
filed with the FCC for over like $3 million, which is a small amount because their TV were actually tracking data. Samsung has the same thing. Sony, LG, all of them have some type
Yeah.
of tracking data. And
Of
so
course.
it's yeah, I'm not sure what to think about that. It's kind of goes
Yeah.
with it now.
I'm wondering if Bose, knew purposely, oh, no one's gonna find out. I wonder if they made a decision consciously saying,
I think
yes, let's
so.
collect this information, sell it. Oh, what happens if you get in trouble? Well, no one's gonna find out. I mean, I
No,
wonder
I
if
mean,
if it ever came to that conversation.
no, I think all of them do. I mean, just look at all these examples we just talked. I just mentioned the TV manufacturers, but that's not just the TV manufacturers. They're all the Internet of Things. Basically, these companies have, they have a lot of resources behind them, and
Of course.
so once they get caught, it's no big deal for them. $3 million, even like 100, $200 million. That's nothing for a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So they're
Hmm.
gonna keep pushing the edge of what they can do, and then once they get caught, they have a team of lawyers, and it's not like they don't know. They developed this, so they knew, and so yeah. So in terms of like what effect this will have, I think like similar to all the other privacy thing, and I know Microsoft Windows, we had the privacy issues with Windows 10, and now with the Creators Update, and also it doesn't even matter anymore. It's like you kind of accept the fact that there is going to be privacy issues, but you also think like, oh man, if I'm having privacy issues and if we like shout loud enough, they'll make changes. Well, the companies aren't stupid. They'll make changes, but then they'll make other changes.
Hmm.
And so I think like what you said earlier, it's great to be aware, but in terms of how much you can do, I think how much you can do is really dependent upon how much you need it. Like for example, the Bose is a great example of that, right? How much do you really need wireless Bluetooth headphones right now? If it's not a super necessity for you, just use these until it gets to the point where you have no choice. So that's one way you could minimize the amount of data collection. Or maybe if you don't want to download the app and it's an extra thing, then that's another level.
Right.
So I think for a lot of our security issues, data stuff, I think for us as consumers, you could do like, I would say, in my opinion, simple common sense things for now. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, and I'm wondering this whole lawsuit could have been side skirted by just accepting a terms of agreement, right? Like terms of services. It's kind of weird because most applications and most services you sign up for say, okay, we're collecting this data, we're collecting this data, and normally it's never an issue. Well, for the most part, like you do it legally, right? You sign up for a
Yes.
service, and they said, okay, we have access to your data, and we're going to sell it to third parties, or it's possible that we may sell it to third parties. And then when you make your account, you click accept, and it works, right?
Yeah, that is kind of weird. I'm
But
surprised they
yeah,
didn't
for
do
the
that.
Bose, it's like, yeah, why did you just put
Yeah,
your terms of service, which no one's really going to read anyways? And I
yeah.
don't think it's really going to inhibit anyone from
No,
not using your app.
and even if you did
Yeah.
read it, you can't use it without agreeing to it.
Exactly.
So,
Like the amount of people who it actually affect, I think very minuscule, you know?
yep. Yeah,
Um,
that's a good point. I'm surprised
yeah,
that they
yeah,
didn't put a legal terms of service and you agree to it,
exactly.
and that covers their butt. That's really,
So
really weird.
yeah, that's why I kind of like I asked that question. I wonder if they made that decision conscious and like, and also consciously decided to leave it out of like the terms, of service and agreements.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
really
don't
weird.
know. I
I
mean,
don't know.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe it's like one of the engineering teams like who made the app. They put it in. They thought it was a good idea, and they just forgot about
Yeah.
it, right? I mean,
I
there's a
don't
possibility. I mean, I don't
no.
know.
I
It's
don't think that's the case. I mean,
uh,
because if you look at any of the streaming services,
mm,
your point makes more sense than anything else. They knew about it, but why didn't they just put that in the legal terms of service, buried in
yeah,
the legalese? Because all the other companies do. That's just so weird. I don't,
yeah.
yeah, I don't get that. That doesn't make sense to me. And I don't
It's just
think
like a few lines could have just like
exactly.
circumvented this whole situation.
And I don't think a multi-billion-dollar
Yeah.
corporation with the R&D team, they wouldn't overlook a line of code like that. They know how it works, and so that's
I mean, I don't know.
I don't think. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they
Well,
knew how it worked. They know,
mm,
but for them not. Yeah, your point makes so much sense. If they just put in legalese, like you said, just a few lines, no problem. They
yeah,
would have taken. Yeah, that's weird.
yeah,
I don't get that, but we'll see. We'll see what
yeah,
happens.
yeah. So it's very interesting, and just like that small change is the difference between a lawsuit and just whatever another product that we use, right? So that's pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah,
But it's also like a weird juxtaposition because like, oh, now that we put in legalese, it's totally okay. But when we don't, you feel offended, you feel violated, right?
exactly.
Even though
That's so
even
weird.
even though you give out that same information everywhere else, the one time we're
Yep.
like, yeah,
And you have the Google Home device. I think a few weeks
yeah,
ago, Google got in trouble with that as well.
okay,
It was listening in when it shouldn't. I can't
yeah,
remember the exact thing, or maybe it was Burger King trying to game the Google Home system. I can't. I can't. No, it was the Google Assistant service. But anyway, it's so funny. You're right. I mean, I think a lot of these companies they can avoid it by just putting a few lines of legalese.
yeah,
So that's just
yeah.
it's weird. But that's kind of weird that Bose is in the news, though. I think that was the big thing because we hear these other technology companies like the Googles, Microsoft, Apple. We hear about them all the time in the news, But Bose, I think that's why it was so significant. It's
Mm,
not the fact that they were collecting data behind the scenes because pretty much every every company does that, especially technology companies. But when it's Bose, that's the first time I heard them in the news
mm,
in that way, in a negative. Like I've never heard of that before. That's my first
yeah,
time. So I think that's what's so significant about it. It was a huge consumer electronics brand that's not specifically in a tech space that's in the news for privacy.
mm,
So that sets a
exactly.
precedence elsewhere. So
Yeah.
that's pretty significant.
I mean, other companies you expect them to do that. Whatever, it's too
Yeah,
far gone, right? Like, you can't do anything about
exactly,
it.
exactly. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
so weird. So now I think with this, if it does become more mainstream in terms of the news, which I think it will up to a certain point because it is Bose,
Right.
maybe people will start thinking more about their consumables that they have around the house because as you know, a lot of these internet of things, refrigerators have internet service. Your microwave can talk to your washer and dryer, I mean, it's so weird, but they can
Mhm.
communicate with each other because a lot of
Yeah.
them have these services built in now. And maybe people would think more about that. Maybe shut
Mhm.
off the internet off of your refrigerator. I
Right.
don't know. Just
I
things like
mean,
that.
from like innovation standpoint, it's actually really cool, right? That we have all these
Mm-hmm.
devices talking to each other. Like,
That
but the
is.
thing is, like, they gotta make money somehow. So like, it's not their business model to collect data about you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I mean, I understand it because when you
Yeah.
make a device or a product, you want to keep your user base, right, or your customer base. So you need to like understand them as much as possible, right?
Yeah. You need to
So you
collect
need to
data.
collect data on them,
Yeah.
so you can continue to give them like the right services and make the right
Mm-hmm.
products. Um, and that's just the way it is nowadays. Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
can't really change it, and it's been going on. I mean, collecting data about your customer is something new. It's such a more efficient way to do it now, right? Because of
Exactly.
low cost of computing, the advances and
And
just collection of data and like being able to process all of it.
yeah, and this has been going on since pretty much the beginning of time, like back then when you would collect data it would be on rocks or walls or something, right? And then later be paper.
Surveys, maybe, right?
Yeah, but even
Yeah.
if you think about programming, your programming had to collect data. Like if you had a program errored out, you would have logs to find out why your program errored out, right? Or you would have exceptions for it. So there's no way you can avoid. You have to collect data. It's just
Right.
it's just the type of data and how it's
'Cause
being used.
you need it to progress, right? To move
Yes.
quickly, to be able to stay within your market and to stay competitive.
Yep. Yep.
Unfortunately, a lot of times this data is being collected and sold to third parties for monetary gain, right? So maybe that's what Bose. I think is that what Bose is doing? They're
Yes.
collecting
Yes.
listening habits, right? Usage
Mm-hmm.
statistics and selling to other companies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean,
But that happens to us all the time. I mean, so I don't know. I think once again, I think if you
Yeah.
know about this, you could just go to comments and stuff until you get to the point where you don't have a choice. Because in a few more years, you might not have a choice. You have to get wireless earphones.
Yeah.
You have to get glasses with LCD screens built in. with internet access. It's just unfortunately. I'm gonna try to push it as long as I can.
Yeah, of course.
But,
And for me, it's not, I'm not too concerned about other companies having my data because they want to make a model of me, right, and to see what kind of person I am, age range, what are my habits, and things like that. It's more the implications on what can happen if it falls into the wrong hands. I think is it's a huge concern in privacy because, for example, like the government gets their hands on it, which they probably already have.
they already have it. Yeah.
I mean, if it's to like other commercial companies, whatever, you're just trying to make money off me, and I choose to give you money or not. But when it falls into like another entity, like the government or something, it's kind of like, man, it's just different, right? Because then they're like actually spying on you for other reasons to not make money off you.
Yeah. That's a whole nother area. It's never ending. But I think what you said earlier, whenever we do talk about this thing, it's just more about awareness. So if you're kind of aware of these things, then you can make different decisions. Your lifestyle changes.
And whatever you're comfortable with. I mean,
yeah.
And maybe this is kind of like a true point of being like ignorance is bliss. If you don't know what data they're collecting about you, maybe you don't even care. Right?
Yeah, or just agree to the licensing agreements. Yeah.
So I think maybe that was our mistake. Maybe we're too aware now. Now we're like getting all paranoid about it. But
yeah. But it is interesting though. I really do think it's interesting because it's Bose and not some purely technology company. So maybe we'll see more of this in the future. As more and more things become connected, as more and more things are collecting data, telemetry, then I think we'll see more of this come up. But just like what we're talking about, after a certain point, you just kind of get used to it. That doesn't mean that you don't have to accept it though. You could just,
or that you shouldn't care about it. We should care about it because
exactly.
of I don't know, things like the Stop Internet Privacy Act. All those privacy bills are kind of coming through Congress, right? To be able for the government to I'm sorry, what was the last bill? Like I know it sounds weird, but I haven't kept up with it. It was
I don't keep up with it, but it's basically to allow more power to the telecoms.
Right, so they can so they can collect all your browsing history, right? Or something like that.
Something like that. But in other to sell it, but in other countries they're already doing that, like in Europe, in the UK. They it's just really depends on what country you're at.
Yeah, and if you ever go to your UK site, you notice they say, "Do you accept that we have cookies?" Right?
Yeah,
and that's a European thing. Yeah. So
yes, it is. It's an EU thing, but at the same time, these laws or whatever, it on the top, that's one thing. But what's really happening underneath, that's completely different. That could have been happening this whole time. As here in the U.S., we're well aware, of things that are occurring, and so it's technology, and you're in the technology space, so whatever's being told on the media, it's way different underneath. And so I don't think laws wise, not to get too political, but I think that's really separate from the technologies, because the technologies, they could do so much, and since they are all around the world, they have a lot of capabilities, and so I just leave it at that,
It just depends on what we do with it. This is what matters, right? I mean, the capability is always going to be there. It's always going to happen. Just got to make sure there's enough checks and balances for it to be fair to us.
Yeah, because you can understand if you would develop a program, right, and then you had to take into account the political aspects of each country, there's no way you're going to program something like that. The program's going to work exactly or very close to the way it should everywhere. So the algorithm's going to work the same.
Yeah.
It's just what they
I mean,
do with the data or what they do with whatever
yeah.
it's
And
using it
that's
for.
something called regulatory compliance. So, you know, when corporations do business in countries around the world, you have to be very careful about that because you got to make sure you follow the local laws and everything. You know,
it's complex.
Yeah, it's very complex, and sometimes because I worked in global compliance for a while, so I kind of see the inside track on that. But anyways, so
it's so much different, you know. I mean, I think as geeks, if you just look at it from a very technology focused arena, this stuff is really simple.
Yeah.
It's very simple. You know, it's
cool. It's to some degree, right? Like,
yeah, it is. I mean, technology is binary. It really is. You know, it's just that when you have all the other stuff around it, it just
with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, it just makes it really complex. So, anyways, it'd be interesting to see how this whole Bose thing turns out. You know, especially any long-term effects it might have.
Yeah, I also saw. I don't know if you saw this, but the WikiLeaks on I think like Project Weeping Angel Weep, where essentially the CIA had created some way for you to for them to listen in through your Samsung TVs, and it's like it wasn't like inherently built into Samsung TVs. It's like a really, really crude workaround. Something like where you had to have a certain program download on your USB. That program would like exploit something in Samsung firmware and then your TV has to be connected to a hotspot or to a Wi-Fi network. And then if you had this program that happened to be installed on this USB stick that happens to be connected to your TV, which is connected to the Wi-Fi, then the CIA could theoretically listen in through your TV. And maybe it's not that implementation that's too worrying, but it's the fact that the government is actively trying to find things like this to further listen in on us.
Yeah, so basically this is me and my brother, we always have these conspiracy type episodes. I mean, so if you're just watching it, yes,
but I mean it's happening, right?
Yeah,
like
it is.
And we're not trying to advocate or like we're not trying to get like fear monger about like, oh, they're listening to everything you say, so you gotta be careful and you gotta do this and this. It's just the fact that like, oh, I saw that the CIA was doing this. Not surprised. Really, it's more just like not surprised kind of camp.
Yeah, you're not surprised. And so I think the majority of people, at least, I would say all around the world, even in underdeveloped countries, they understand in general that a lot of things are being collected. They know that. It's just that how do you deal with it, and so that's kind of where it's at. It's inevitable now. You just don't.
It's nothing new. I mean, you look back to like banking, right? I'm pretty sure like credit cards are like the forefront of like collecting data on the person to see their spending habits, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, and even then, like technology was involved, right, to be able to store this data, but that's a very rudimentary time, right? Where they just collected spending habits, and then they could calculate what kind of spender you were. So it's nothing new.
It's nothing new. Or looking at your credit score to determine what best. Right. It's nothing new. It's just expanding it and then trying to use it in different ways. But the whole Bose thing is just different because at least now it's a consumer and not technology. Not to say the other ones are not, but this is more of a consumer-based stuff that and a name recognition that's outside.
When you think Bose, you don't think of data collection. You just think of hardware. You just think of headphones, right?
Exactly. Speakers. That's all you think about. So this is
like
really
Google,
different.
Amazon, Microsoft tech companies. It's just a point. So it is. Yeah, and I think you should see any other hardware manufacturers start to do that too. It's just that, and I think it is kind of a clickbaity headline because you'll see something like your vacuum is listening to you, and you're like, what? My vacuum's listening to me. It's like it's kind of like out there. It's kind of like bizarre.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, they do have those toilets that do collect data, though, right?
They
That's
do.
Kind of
Yeah. I'm just waiting for when your wearables and your clothes, they tell you what to do every day. Get up at this time, or it shocks you or something, because they already have bands like that shock you, I forgot what the name of it was, but
yeah. I did see some engineer, some college engineer. He made this bed where it would like literally spring load him out of bed to wake him up.
Oh, that's funny.
So you put like this hydraulic system in there and just like boop, and they get out of bed.
It's like a cartoon, the older movies.
Maybe we'll come to that one day.
Okay, that's funny.
It's pretty interesting to see as humans and what we trade for convenience, right? Because the reason why we have all these cool technologies and innovations to be like that much more convenient. And when you're more convenient, it opens up more time for you to do. But like, what do we do with our time?
But that's the
And
thing. I mean, that's why these companies and
yeah,
us included. That's why you create things to fill people's time.
right.
And if anything, I mean, in general, people just get lazier because of all these technologies.
Hmm.
I mean, simple things like when I was a kid, I remember like 10 phone numbers out of the top of my head.
Hmm.
Or if you had to go to the bank or something, you would physically have to go. Or if
Right.
you're gonna go shopping, you would physically have to go. You have to be outside. It's so much different now. I think just
Hmm.
in general, technology has made us all lazier, and so we're more
Yeah.
dependent
But
upon
but
it.
the difference is the people who take advantage of their newfound time, right, and the other people who I don't know, maybe don't make as wise decisions with it.
Yeah, I don't think the majority, and I'm
Yeah.
just speaking from my perspective, I don't think the majority of people use their time more wisely. They just find more things to fill in their time.
Right, right, exactly. Which is what I'm
So
saying. Like, I'm all for convenience and making things easier and better, so we can have more room and more time in our heads to remember things that should be more important, right?
yeah,
But what ends up happening is we just fill it with something else,
exactly,
and we
exactly,
kind of like
and
we get into a cycle of like just consumerism, right? And it's just like we
yeah,
just need to buy, and do this and do this and
yeah,
do this. So I
and
mean,
that's nothing new. It's just been
yeah,
increased exponentially because now we can consume not only just like buy
mhm,
stuff, but we can consume content. We can have our attention consumed 24/7
right,
anywhere around the world. That's what's new. And we've gotten lazier. I'm just be real. I mean, you're mentally. I think the majority of people they don't have to think about as many things. Like phone numbers is one example, or like if you don't have your phone, you can't do a Google search on stuff. If you didn't
mhm,
have it, you wouldn't know. It's that type of stuff that we're very,
yeah,
very dependent. And I think that example you said about a bed springing you, that might be the norm because we're too lazy to even wake up early. It's just,
yeah,
it's not gonna. Yeah, I think that's the future where
yeah,
we're heading. I know it sounds crazy, but that might be the future where you
yeah,
need these technologies to even keep you from not doing nothing. You know.
right, right.
So
And again,
anyway.
it is it's binary, like you mentioned earlier, right?
Hmm.
This stuff could be used for great things. But what normally happens is a lot of it does kind of go consumer side, right? And
It
someone's
has
just
to.
making money off you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where the money's at. I mean, it's
So,
consumer side.
but there is
So
that fine balance, For example, like I don't know if you look at like autonomous vehicles, right? That could be a great thing, one for a lot less accidents on the road, right? To make you know emissions better. I don't know. There's like a plethora of things that can come out of autonomous vehicles, right? But what's going to end up happening is like it's going to go kind of like part uh, to like create a new industry or like a new
hmm
standard in the industry, but at the same time, a lot of it's going to go to being like just consumers, right? So
yeah, I mean, but if
there'll
if you
be
look
trade
at
offs.
if
Yeah.
you even look at history before when we had automobiles, right?
Mhm.
People, I think, even though they didn't live longer because of they didn't have the technologies for health, I would say a lot of people were healthier. You know what I mean? And then with the automobiles, the airplane, as more and more convenience come in, even though we as human beings live longer, once again I go back to the fact that we're lazier, because of it. That's just my opinion. So I guess it really depends on what perspective you're seeing at. If you
Right.
talk to any older people who lived back then, they always tell you the story of, oh, I remember your age, I had to walk to school,
Right. Right. But I'm
things
wondering,
like that.
like, I wonder if there's like a number that you can quantify for efficiency, right? Or for like productivity. Like, say you release a product, right? Like the car.
Hmm.
How much more were we able to progress as a society versus how much it detracted from the society, right? You have that trade off between it's a good thing, right? Yes, it makes us lazy in a sense, but it
Hmm.
enables us to do this much more. And I'm sure like a lot of products have like I don't know some balance between it helped this much over here, but then it detracted this much over here. Whether it's never going to be like 50-50, but I'm wondering if there is something you can quantify, like some number, like oh,
Oh, there
yeah.
has to be. I mean, when you're programming, you're quantifying. How can I get a millisecond more of
Well, I
performance
mean,
out of
I
it,
mean, in
right? I
terms of
mean,
like impact on society, right?
yeah, I don't,
You
honestly,
know,
I don't think that's their first measure. I mean,
no, I just
I'm not saying
yeah,
they don't add that quantification in there, but I don't think that's the main thing that they think about when they're
right. No, no,
producing
I,
it.
I, I
Yeah,
definitely agree. I'm just
yeah.
saying, I'm wondering if there is a way to do it. I know there's so many variables that would go into it, and it'd
Mm-hmm.
be like it would be almost too complex probably. But I'm wondering if you can get like just some rough estimate where like
Yeah.
like you mentioned before we had to walk to school, right? Well, now that we have a
Yeah.
car, we can do this and this and this, and
Yeah.
it expanded us to do this. And somewhere like you could say like, oh, I don't know, 70%, it helped us like progress like 70%
Yeah. I
faster.
mean, well,
Whereas 30%, it did this to like,
well,
you know,
I'm 100%
yeah,
positive they do that because when they're marketing to you, they'll say, "Oh, you just saved 15 hours by using this." They did quantify it,
right.
because
But
they can
that's
show
like,
measurable results.
but that's like, on like one level, right? I want you like just zoom back out. It's like look at a bigger picture, like society as a whole, right? Like what did this
Mm.
product do for society as a whole?
Yeah.
Like
I
the
j-
internet, right? You know,
yeah. I just really think it depends on number one on the industry, and then number two, what what society benefits are you talking about?
right?
It really depends. But I'm pretty sure everything that's being produced, they do quantify that. I think on a bigger level because you kind of have to, you
Well,
know.
I mean, like yeah, like financially or like for business sense, yeah, that makes sense. I'm just wondering, just like impact on society and stuff. Like if you just like take away the financial aspect of it, and just like what did this product do to society? You know, as like a very
Yeah,
neutral outlook.
I'm pretty sure they do. But once again, I think it depends on what your perspective on helping society or benefit to society is.
Right.
If you
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
look at it from one sense, where what's the environmental impact, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take an example, the iPhone. Okay, if you look at it from an environmental aspect, it doesn't help because there's
Mm.
more electronics and there's more electronic dumpsters out there, right? Because we have all this excess electronics. I'm using that as an example.
Yeah.
But then if
No,
you look at
yes.
you look
Good
at
example.
Apple, yeah, you look at Apple iPhones as how does it improve your life in society? Well, more people have these devices that they connect with more other people. They could be more efficient. They could spend more time. They could communicate with each other. And then also, if you think about the monetary aspects, how it can help society, it creates more jobs. So more people could actually take care of their families because it's such a big company. They have a lot of cash. So, it's really, I think it really depends
Right.
on what you're looking
Okay.
at.
Yeah, no,
That's
I
what I'm
definitely
saying.
agree. Like
So,
the companies, they'll always quantify like the benefits of it. But what about the other side? You know,
well, that
what it
depends.
detracts from?
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. It depends on
yeah,
which you're looking at because
yeah,
if you're looking at from that's why I gave those examples. You're looking for environmental angle, maybe not so good.
hmm,
But if you're looking at like quality of life for people who have jobs
right.
because of it, then that's good. It just
Yeah, yeah.
really
But even
depends.
like to a specific category, right? Like how much time do you spend with your iPhone that's productive versus how much time do you spend with your iPhone that's unproductive, right? Like that you
Yeah,
just quote unquote waste your time with. Anyways, I wasn't going anywhere with it. I just thought it'd be like interesting, you know.
yeah. I'm positive that they do all these studies. They do. I mean, even like in user testing groups, they
Mhm.
find that out. I know they do. I just really
Yeah.
think once again it depends on what angle you want to look at.
Right, but if we can aggregate all that data and look at it from just like a very neutral perspective, I think that'd be pretty interesting. But I don't think that's ever really gonna happen. I mean, one because like they don't want to reveal like I don't know.
I don't know.
From a business perspective, yeah, it doesn't make sense.
I
But
always
it'd
go.
just be cool.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
always go back to what your perspective of
yeah,
neutral is, and so it's just so different. But they could look at it from any angle. I mean,
right, right, right.
it's it's a wide and complex
Yeah,
thing. You know.
yeah, yeah. Of course, and that's why I said like, yeah, probably you can't take that like single snapshot of it. It'd be more like a I don't know, like a mural of different information just put together,
Hmm.
and it doesn't necessarily have to like correlate. But anyways, um, yeah, just like
Yeah.
I think the most interesting part is that we're seeing it happen, right? It's going to happen through each and every decade. Like this is going to be the hot thing, then this and this and this. Because
Hmm.
like, you think about it in the '90s, they collected, like I mentioned earlier, banks would
Hmm.
collect information on your spending habits. It's like the '90s, 2000s. I mean, what would you say like was the big, well, if there was any movement in information collection in 2000s that you can remember?
I mean, for me, when you're talking about banking is probably one of the largest collectors of data. But
Well, I'm
or
just saying like the difference like per decade, right? Like yeah, probably '80s, '90s is kind of like banking. 2000, like I would say like 2010 onward is more about like personal information because we had access to smartphones and all these smart devices, right, that could collect that
hmm
kind of information. But before 2010, I don't think that was really the issue or really the case, right? So I'm trying to
yeah,
think of like what technology from like 2000, 2010 kind of like if there were any like data collection or technologies that kind of contributed to like mass data collection.
yeah. What you said is perfect. Smartphones,
Mhm.
smartphones combined with the
No, well,
internet.
I would say
You
that's
know,
from 2010 onwards, but I'm saying from 2002 through 2010, kind of like
2000 through 2010, the
yeah,
internet.
Yeah.
The internet, yeah, hands
In the
down.
infant, I would say in an infant stage though, right? Because a lot of people were still like playing with it and kind of like it was still
Yeah,
growing.
but I mean, with the internet, that was a brand new way to collect tons of data. It's unprecedented how much data could be collected because of the internet. So
Right.
2000 to 2010, definitely the internet. That
Yeah.
was the single biggest, I would say,
Yeah.
revolution in terms of the amount of data that can be collected
Right.
all around the world 24 hours a day. We never had anything like that prior to the internet. So the
Mhm.
internet is the single biggest change when it comes to data collection, period.
Mhm.
You know?
But even at that point, it was kind of like we're almost opting into it, right? Because at that point, it didn't. I would say like, yeah, they collected data about us automatically, but it was more so like us like connecting to it, like picking the services to use at the very beginning. And like to me, I feel like it was in a infant stage, right?
Yeah,
Whereas like 2010, everything just started became automated and
well,
at
I
like
mean,
such a rate, it's like just crazy.
like me being older,
Mhm.
we had our old COBOL mainframes and stuff, which have been around since the '60s, right?
Mhm.
And so data collection has been happening a long time, and so I don't think it was ever in its infancy. They've always been collecting data. It's just the way that they're able to collect the data and the amount of
Oh
data.
yeah, I would say the amount of
Yeah,
data and yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So the internet really changed a lot of things, and I just I don't. I mean, when I was working at my first company, we did airlines, and so we had tons of data going back to like the '70s. I think even like the early '60s. So we had a lot of data on people, and so we were able to tell for this particular person what legs of flights that they went on from years ago. So then
Mhm.
they could use that to market to people, and even before the computers, they would have like when I was in Jamaica, they still had old technology, so they had all this data in like boxes of cards. So
Mhm.
so I mean, that's even though it's dated, it's still
Right.
in terms of not technology, it is a form of data
Yeah.
collection, and so they've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
It's just that like what you were saying with the internet, they could collect
Mhm.
more data,
Right.
way more
Okay.
data.
So maybe I should like uh, refer to it more as like the efficiency of data collection. Right.
Yeah, efficiency and overall expansiveness.
Right.
I mean,
The ability to collect data
yeah,
at a rapid rate.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the next evolution, which I really feel it's going to be wearables, not just clothing, but our
Mhm.
contacts, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Then they'll be really able to, we always go back to the show, but that Black Mirror,
Mhm.
that is the perfect example of where data collection is heading.
Mhm.
And also the society impacts of the data on you as a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
That's going to be really interesting, kind of scary, but at the
Mhm.
same time, but yeah.
After that, I feel like yeah, kind of like along with wearables, but a lot of very specific devices, which would I guess be considered like Internet of Things now, be able to track your movement or where your eyes look at. Like for example, say you went into a restaurant, you're looking at the menu board, right? What if they had a camera on the menu board that would track your retinas, right, to see where you're looking at, to just even see like, oh, most people look at this corner, right? Most
Yeah,
people look at this item but buy this item,
yeah,
or most people look here but never buy it, right?
yeah.
Uh, in terms of like collecting data just on our habits physically, that could
Mm-hmm.
possibly be the next thing. I mean, I know we do
It's
it to some extent,
yes.
for example, gestures on navigating a website, right? Like most
Mm-hmm.
people click on the left side, like here's a hotspot
Yes.
of where activity happens.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I'm wondering when they kind of like abstract it out of manual user input and like it's just a normal thing. You walk into a restaurant,
Yes.
they'll see where people stand or to see what people look at or buy or
Yep.
whatever, like
Yep. And I think that's already happening. And
yeah.
especially with technology such as VR and augmented reality, they can simulate a lot of things because
Mhm.
they have cameras inside the stores or whatever you go at. They know the exact positions, or they basically have a data set where they know the basically the pattern of where
Yeah.
people stand.
Likelihood to
Exactly. And so they
yeah.
could put that in a simulation. There you go. You
But I'm
know,
wondering at one point where it just becomes abundant, right? Like every store you walk into, every building you walk into, someone knows exactly
yeah.
how
Well, your cell phones,
your habits.
your cell phones.
Right.
They track everywhere you go. I mean, so
Right, right. But even on a more granular level than that, right? Like
Yeah, I don't know how much more granular it could get. I mean,
Oh,
because
you can definitely get more granular because like right now,
they have your locations, and
well,
since
right, but
they,
location is accurate to about 10 meters. Like government mandated. It's actually like they can get more granular than that, but there's like a law saying that okay, when you use GPS location, it has to be accurate within 10 meters. No
yeah,
more,
well,
no less,
I'm
right?
not just well.
But
That's why I used the example of them looking at patterns
mm,
because they know the patterns that you have, and since your cell phone is basically the most personal thing, it carries everything, not just your location, your buying habits, what websites you go to. So they could put all that information together, and then if they
right, no, no,
can,
no. I mean, I agree that they already do that, but I'm wondering like when they start bringing it into other things outside of your cell phone, right? Just like more ways. Like I would say, like yeah, cell phones they collect them. They're always going to collect the majority of data on you, right? But I'm wondering when they like start to squeeze out these other little places where they can put them, right?
well, no, that's what I'm
That cell
saying.
phones can't track.
They'll match it with other things, like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
why I used the example of cameras for VR and augmented reality. They'll be able to combine that all together. Like what you were saying, that's a good example of you walking in, you're looking at something, it knows that you're tracking that, and then if they combine with all the other data, they know the likelihood of you
Oh
being
yeah, yeah,
interested
yeah.
in
No,
it.
definitely. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
always. I mean, to me, that's like a given, right? I mean, any data they have on you from any source, and that's what I was
yeah.
saying. Like, they have one source is just already on your cell phone. They have another source on your
Mm-hmm.
wearables, right? Another source like GPS, your car. But then I'm
Yeah,
wondering when it just becomes where it's just you can't escape from it, right? Like it's everywhere, no matter where you look. Whether you're
yeah.
like hiking, walking in a park or something, or
Mm-hmm.
walking to a store or buying something from a grocery store. They have all these things like quote unquote observing you, right, or collecting
Mm-hmm.
data on you in some way,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I mean, again, kind of cool. Like to me, it's like, oh man, you really get to understand people, and you really get to figure out what this person is or who they are. Oh, like habits about this person, which I find interesting. Um, but at the same time, yeah, most of it's just gonna get used for marketing purposes, so they can sell you something else.
Yeah,
But
it's massive. I mean, it's used on so many levels. I mean, and if you could predict a lot of, I think about the Minority Report a lot. That movie with Tom Cruise,
yeah,
that had a lot of really good elements as well, in terms of what will be happening. You remember
right.
they didn't drive their own cars, and
Mhm.
like your example of Tom Cruise when he was walking inside that had ads running, and
Mhm.
they were like following him around
Right.
town, and like just
Yeah.
I, man,
I
that makes.
mean, yeah, yeah, and like from a technology perspective, I find it interesting. Well, maybe I find it interesting because you can solve problems with it, right? I
Mhm.
don't know. You have this set of data, and you can solve this problem that you couldn't solve before, right?
Yeah.
That's what I like. I mean, it's interesting to me on that facet, but at the same time, like there's always like the too much is a bad thing, you know?
Well, I think it goes back to what your perspective of it is. Like for example, that same piece of programming, right? You could see the ways it could help society, right? But
Right,
you could also use that same programming and use it to benefit just yourself.
right, right.
So I think, yeah. So that's why I really feel like technology as a whole, it's very binary. It's until it gets to the point where it has more
Yeah, I mean, I
awareness.
think the technology itself is binary, but what you do with it is like the really gray
Yes.
area.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with great power comes great responsibility. Uh, Anyways, so yeah, so if you take anything away from this, we're not. I mean, I don't think we're trying to bash, all this data collection methods. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
understand why they're needed,
Mm-hmm.
why they're so prevalent. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as you're aware and
Yep.
it's always a good thing.
Yes.
So that way you don't always like blindly give up your information, or if things do change or start to shift in a unfavorable way, at least now, you're
Yeah.
somewhat knowledgeable about it, so you can maybe do something about it. So,
Exactly, and then not get like super shocked by it or paranoid.
right, when it's too
Well,
late, right?
there's
Yeah.
always going to be some level, like what you're saying earlier. Ignorance is bliss. Like sometimes when you know more than the norm, you get more paranoia as well. In some cases. So it's a
It's a middle.
double-edged
It's a
sword.
fine line.
Yeah.
You can choose your battles, I guess.
Hmm.
Anyways, so yeah, that was the whole Bose scandal. Well, Bose fiasco, I would say. Not our first time we've talked about privacy, but it's always
Hmm.
relevant. I feel
Yeah,
like.
it is.
Okay. Anyways, so our second topic of the day, just some mechanical keyboard stuff. I know I've kind of like dipped
Yeah.
and that into it a little bit. So maybe you can ask me some questions or
Can
like
you
what
show
you
your
think.
keyboard again for viewers who've never
Yeah,
seen? Like my
sure.
brother's a huge mechanical keyboard fan.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not huge, but it's more than average, I would say. But the cool thing is, in any like geek community, it's like people just really love it. They like they get sucked into it, and mechanical keyboards is kind of that for me. Um, and in terms of like other things that I've really enjoyed too, like games, music, movies, TV shows. I feel like this is something like new and fresh, and it's still really exciting for me. I don't know what it is about mechanical keyboards that's so captivating, but it is to a lot of people, I feel like. And anyways, so this is my keyboard. Mechanical keyboard, for those of you who don't know, basically it has I think it's like mechanical parts in there. Majority of keyboards nowadays, they're actually like rubber dome technology. So imagine like a rubber cup, right? And when you push down on it, there's some force that you have to do for it to kind of collapse. And one of the big things with rubber dome keyboards is that it's inconsistent, right? Because it is rubber. Whereas mechanical keyboards offer you a more consistent
Mm-hmm.
and uh, different types of feedback for it. So mechanical keyboards were the norm, 70s, 80s,
Yep,
maybe even
I
up to
remember.
the
Yeah.
90s, the really loud clack, 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 clack.
Yes.
IBM Model M is the probably like
Mm-hmm.
more famous ones, which use a bumping spring technology. But as like the technology started to progress, more manufacturers started doing rubber domes as a way to lower manufacturing costs, and eventually just became the norm because I guess at that point people just really didn't care about the tactility or like the typing experience itself. And I
Mm-hmm.
would say a lot of people still really don't. It doesn't matter that much to them. But as a programmer who I spend typing all day, it's actually a really nice and satisfying thing for you to spend a little bit of extra money on just have like that better typing experience. And for me, it's one of those situations where when you start it, like it's really hard to go back. Like when you taste something really good for the first time, it's kind of hard to go back. um, yeah, so this is the N Pro keyboard. This is a 60% keyboard, and 60% refers to the number of keys on the keyboard. So essentially, 100% keyboard is a full-size keyboard with F row keys. You have your number pad on the side and everything. So this is about 60% of the size of a standard keyboard. If you notice, there's no F row. There's no dedicated aero cluster.
Mm-hmm.
This one's actually Bluetooth as well. And these are my Surface. So this is like my daily driver, essentially. And mechanical keyboards will have different uh, different switches, as they call it. And they're normally kind of identified by color, but they offer different typing experiences. So blue switches are very clicky. If you've ever seen like the gamer keyboards, they're most likely blue switches, like really clicky.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have linear switches, and the blue switches also have like a bump on them. So there's like a bit of tactility when you press down on it. So you feel a bump midway through it. Whereas other keys are linear, where there's no bump and it just slides up and down, like very lubricated. Yeah, so this is one of my keyboards. This is Zelios switches. It's a pretty, I guess custom because you can't really buy that with any keyboard. So I did like unsolder or desolder all my switches and resolder those new switches. And this is my other keyboard for my desktop. This is a Chalk Mini. And you should notice like this has a dedicated arrow function. You have your F keys here and some extra keys over here. Yeah, so I mean, like, what do you think about the mechanical keyboard community? I know you've seen me kind of like talk about it quite a bit and like kind of like really into it. So from your outsider perspective,
Yeah,
what do you think
well,
about it?
for me, I've been around since like the first computers came out, so obviously it wasn't a mechanical versus non-mechanical back then.
It was
Everything was
just a keyboard that
mechanical.
was
Yeah,
all
so
keyboards were mechanical.
exactly. So I remember my Commodore 64 keyboards all the way up, and so I never really thought about it until later on. When you talked about mechanical keyboards, and like when I had my older keyboards, they were definitely more tactile. They were way more durable. With these rubber ones, after a while, they get stuck. Their responsiveness is not there, and they're like what you were saying, they did it because it saves costs.
Mm.
That's the main reason they do it. And when I go back I still have an old mechanical keyboard here. I don't have it. I had it over here with my older CRT monitors, but I could feel the difference, But what you said is really true. A lot of people now, majority, they won't know the difference because they never really use mechanical keyboards. But for people who haven't used it before and are using it now, there is a difference. And especially if you are working on a computer daily, whether you're programming, whether you're typing, and I really mean typing, it makes a big difference. And I've rarely had my mechanical keyboards mess up in terms of like, I could put a lot more force into it. The keys are going to be, unless I have stuff get stuck in there, they're going to be consistently, it's going to work better. Whereas in my rubber ones, the consistency is not there. Over time, it doesn't because the rubber wears out, So I prefer mechanical keyboards, but at the same time, it's not like it was before. It's been more of a niche thing now, I think, in my opinion, and it's more expensive.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's kind of it is niche, but it is growing at the same time because I see a lot more people joining into it, like getting into it. So I think it's making a kind of a comeback in a sense, and it's a really good community to be in right now, especially like for business opportunities, because I feel like the audience of this, they have a disposable income, so they're willing to throw money at these keyboards. So if you got into the space of making custom keycaps or custom keyboards, it actually could be fairly lucrative, and I think that the demand is there. It's starting to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And you look at all these gaming companies, they're all coming out with their own gaming keyboards as well. I mean, that and the gamer kind of like the gamer peripherals market is actually, it's been growing, right? I think it's been on the up and up for a long time now, for the past 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
And it's only going to be getting more and more popular as more esports titles come out, and like the popularity and majority like just starts to explode. So it kind of goes hand in hand with people love games, people love gaming peripherals. This is kind of like an offshoot, to me.
Yeah.
I feel like.
And it's so funny though. We talked about this before, but I think the whole computing market, it's really heading towards more super duper low end, and high end has always been there. But something that's really been different, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, is the customized high end. More and more people want customized. I think that's a huge opportunity for computing, because the computer sales have been down, at least on like the middle ground, the stuff that is not, it's basically vanilla. But the low end is still selling really well, and then the high end, specifically the high end plus customizable, I think more people are going to be enjoying that, the customization. It's really for them. Like your keyboards, it's not made for anybody else. You actually built that. So I think that's really what you're saying. It's really a great opportunity, and it's really cool when you have something that's made just for you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you compare it to other things, like, well, why would you want to spend that much money on a keyboard? In terms of like parallels for other products, I don't know, maybe like a good knife, right? You can have a knife that cuts, it's pretty dull. I mean, it works, but then you can have like a really nice knife that just like slices and glides through things, or a pair of shoes even. I guess you can buy like a cheaper pair of shoes, and it works, for whatever reason. But if you want that extra comfort, even though it costs maybe 2 or 3 times as much, you can still pay for it. So in terms of like a value proposition, I feel like mechanical keyboards aren't a great value proposition. There are some cheaper mechanical keyboards, so don't get me wrong. There are like lower end mechanical keyboards that's stand anywhere from like $30 to $60. You can still get a really decent experience with it. In terms of just like for like the mass consumerism, it's maybe not. So it is that niche thing that you said. Even though it's niche, it's still growing. Yeah.
And it really depends on the type of person that you are, but I think like regardless, and this has always been something that I think is the norm, regardless of where you're at, people like things that are made for them. Customization is in any field. It's something that I think a lot of people appreciate because it's a reflection of who they are. But in terms of the computing space, I really think that's the next level. Not just high end, just to be high end, but really customized high end. Where you actually do get better quality. And I think in the computing space, I really think versus other things, normally, not always, but normally you do get more when you pay more. I mean, not always, but
in terms of like,
I can see it.
So there's always like that point you cross where this is the best bang for your buck, right? For this much money, you get the most performance out of it. And as you start to spend more and more, it gets a little bit more lopsided, right? So you're spending more, but you don't get as much performance as you did, before. But at the same time, you have disposable income. You're willing to do that, right? So I mean, there's always, like you mentioned, there's like those 3 points really. There's like the low end, the mid end, and the high end. I mean, But like you mentioned, the high end like the high end stuff is, I think, starting to get more and more popular as well.
Yes. Yes, it really is, and I'm enjoying it myself in terms of seeing the progression, because when I got into computing, there was no such thing as customization. Everything was the same. Everything was the same color. So it's really cool to see this. I'm not a huge customization person, but it's really cool to have that. And
Yeah.
that the mechanical keyboard, I would want something like that, because
Yeah.
it does make a difference if you spend a lot of time on a computer. Those little things, it makes a difference, because using these rubber keyboards, my fingers actually hurt more now. Because sometimes when I press it, I have to press it harder to get the same pressure.
Right.
Whereas on my mechanical,
The
the
cool thing-
majority, yeah, I hit it, it's the same.
Yeah, and the cool thing with mechanical keyboards is they come in different weights. So you can find keys that are very light to press, which are really easy on fingers. And then there's some people, like crazy people in the community, who have like a 120-gram switch, which is insane because like I would say most mechanical keyboards are kind of like 45 grams, 50 grams. It's
Oh, that's heavy.
right? And then there's these people like who have twice that weight, and people always comment, "Do your fingers have abs or something?" Or like it's just like an insane amount of pressure you need to press on it. But they're like, yeah, just do it, just do it. But what I was trying to get at is that yes, you can find switches that are very light, to less strain on your fingers, or you can find like that nice middle ground where you have like a nice meaty, thunk to it, or you can go like really hardcore and just have like a stupid, insane like switch that you need to press like the force of like your whole hand to press it down.
I'll be interested to see what happens when, because we kind of already have this where you would have a projected keyboard. They already had some on phones where it projected like a virtual keyboard.
Oh, like IR keyboards or like
Yeah.
something like.
Like
that sounds horrible. Like,
you've seen it. You've seen it on sci-fi movies where they're
Yeah.
moving stuff around,
Yeah.
virtual, but then with the keyboard. That's gonna be different. I'm not sure.
You know what? Maybe we can parallel to this. Maybe like when driving a car, there's like a difference between driving a standard, like a manual transmission versus automatic transmission.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's kind of like the keyboard thing too, because when you drive a manual car, you feel like the control of your car. It's very visceral, right? It gives you that feedback of you being able to control your car however you want it. And I feel like it's pretty similar with keyboards too. You can get a rubber dome, which works, which I don't know, parallel to automatic. Yeah, it works. It works for majority of everyone. But for me, it's like if you're into that and you want that kind of feedback and like that experience, to me, it's about an experience. Maybe a lot of people don't think about typing as an experience, but
Yeah, I think it is if depending on what you do. Like right now, this keyboard. I mean, because I'm on a computer like normally 13 to 15 hours a day, and I already hate my mouse, the cheap mouse, and my keyboard. It hurts my fingers, and so there is a benefit to it. If it depends on what you're using it for, though. But but it does. I can tell the difference though, because my fingers hurt. My the mouse sucks. Sometimes it's not responsive. I'm not playing games or anything, but if you're
so we should get you a
improves your
mechanical
workflow.
keyboard then. I think.
Yeah, maybe
arrange
that might be next. Because
Yeah.
when you are in a computer a lot, you do think about efficiency. You think about your workflow, and also you think about things such as pain. You don't feel it
Little
until
comforts that go a long way.
it goes a long way. Like the chair that you have, it's expensive, but you get a lot of benefits
It's
out
not
of
worth
it.
it. My back does not hurt anymore. I mean, I remember at one point, like it was unbearable to sit in. Anyways, so yeah. So I got a few new things coming down a pipeline in terms of like these mechanical keyboards. I actually bought a slider. So if you think about like audio equipment, right? Like some guy in the studio making audio beats, they have like the sliders on their mixer boards, right? Essentially, it's the same thing for a keyboard, but for multiple uses, right? So it would go on the side here, and you slide it up and down. It would have a keycap on top that would slide up and down. And so far, what the guy has it used for, you can use it for scrubbing and video production. So when you need to like rewind back and forth, it's a lot easier instead of using your mouse to drag something or scroll up and down. You can use it to scroll back and forth between your Chrome tabs, which is pretty cool too. You can use it to scroll your mouse cursor back and forth. So say you're typing something and you need to go back a few spaces, instead of like manually moving your mouse clicking that position, I can just slide it up and down. And so the uses are kind of like, so maybe if you look at the new MacBooks, right, they have the touch bar. Imagine a touch bar, but mechanical version on your keyboard. So
Now that makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
I was kind of interested in the touch bar when it first came out, but the more I think about it, it's such a gimmick. You know,
right.
but that slider on the keyboard, especially if it's on the side, where a number key, just like what you say, like a mixer
Actually, I
board,
mean,
that would help.
so technically it almost accomplishes the same thing, but I think what sets it apart is the what it's implemented in, right? So for like the MacBook, it may be a gimmick for some things, um, but maybe if Apple like implemented like a lot more, well, I don't even know what the current status on it is, or what uses it, what supports it, what doesn't support it, But if they could find some cool and just ingenious ways to use it in programs like this, then yeah, it makes sense. I mean,
Yeah, but one thing I've noticed though, when you're dealing with something that's a slider, you could
mhm.
do this on your phone, right? It's way more accurate when it's mechanical, when
Yes,
it's
yeah,
physical.
definitely, of
And
course,
so, yeah, because
yeah,
I'm touching something I have oily fingers,
yeah.
or the
Or you run the
sensor's not
sensor too
working well.
thin, or yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't register as much. Yeah,
yeah, I would rather have something physical like that, like a
mhm,
slider. It's
yeah.
way more accurate.
Right,
And
like comparative to like a mouse scrolling wheel, right? You know exactly
yes,
when it clicks, like click, 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 click,
exactly.
click. And yeah,
Exactly. So I think that added to the mechanical keyboard, that's cool. I mean, if you
mhm,
do a lot of video editing, or that would
yeah,
really help reduce your workflow.
yeah, yeah. And
You know?
the guy also made some pretty cool stuff too. Like you get a notification, he will have like the bar slide back and forth, like little buzzing
Oh,
thing.
that's cool.
Yeah. There's also like a typewriter mode on it, so as you're typing, it'll like it'll like slowly like progress across, and then at the end of your line, it go to the back. Yeah,
For anybody who doesn't remember, if you had an old school word processor, I had one.
I know.
Um,
Is that what they call
you
it?
only
Old
go
school
back.
word processors.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's an old printing press to go back and forth. So, well, my brother froze.
one pretty
He
cool.
just froze for a second.
Yeah. Oh, I think I might have been lagging a little bit. Yeah. So then the other cool thing with the mechanical keyboards I'm getting into. So I bought another keyboard. So this is going to be my I think fifth keyboard. It's actually a different switch type. It's called I guess I don't know the correct pronunciation, but Topre, Topre. I don't know. It's Topre. And basically it's kind of like a hybrid switch. It's actually part rubber dome. So there is a rubber dome in it, but then there's like a giant mechanical screen that kind of surrounds it. And a lot of
Oh,
people prefer that to the cherry, like the standard mechanical switches. Like a lot of people. And these keyboards, for legit ones, go for about $250 to $300, like brand
crap.
new.
That's
Yeah,
always that's a computer.
but people are willing to pay that much for this keyboard. So I kind of bought like a knockoff version of it. So it's a clone. It should be very, very similar. Not 100% the same, but similar enough. And it's in a layout I like, which is compact. It also has Bluetooth, and it has
Oh,
this different switch type for like $80, which is a lot better than me spending 300, like just diving in the deep end and spending $300 on a keyboard that I may or may not like. So
so it's a hybrid, you said?
yeah, it's a hybrid. Like the popular ones are called Happy Hacking keyboards, which is a Japanese company, and the other ones are Leopold's. Um, but yeah, it is a hybrid switch, and a lot of people say, yeah, even though it's rubber dome, it feels like super good, like
Have you
amazing.
tried it?
I haven't tried it yet,
Oh,
so
okay.
I didn't want to invest like the $200, $300 to try, to buy one, and then figure out I might not like it. So I bought the clone, and then we'll see how that comes out because a lot of people swear by it as well.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
just
That'll
like
be
a
interesting.
legitimate project or product.
Mm.
Um, and it's expensive for a reason because people love it. People are willing to pay that much for it. So maybe it's just like the consumerism thing kind of speaking out, like, oh, I'm better. I'm like the elitist. I got this special. Um, but I'll be able to try it out, so I'm excited about that. So I can, give a review on this slider thing that's gonna be coming in soon, and then on this other type of keyboard with different switches.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see
Soon as
that one,
well.
especially the one
Yeah,
with the slider. I've never seen anything like that on a
yeah.
keyboard.
So that'd be cool. Um, yeah, and then I did. So if you do get a mechanical keyboard, just be very wary that it could range from entry level cheap to stupid expensive. Um, just looking at this, I bought a key set, right? Which is like basically the keys, like this one's blue and white, which is pretty cool. Um, but some custom key sets go anywhere from like $150 to $200 new, just for
Wow, just the
the
keys.
plastic one. Yeah, just the
Oh
keys.
wow.
Um, so I feel like when all this stuff comes in, I'm gonna have like this keyboard that I probably shouldn't have spent that much money on. But to me, it brings me happiness, and that's what I like.
You get use out of it, in other
Yeah,
words.
I mean, it's useful and it's cool to geek out on.
Yeah.
So
It's useful and excessive at the same time.
yeah. Anyway, so there's some cool stuff that's been kind of happening in my keyboard life. If you guys wanted to know about that, um,
Hashtag
and
mechanical.
yeah, hashtag Mech. You know, if you have the opportunity to try one, try it. I mean, it may seem kind of like a non-factor at the time, but once you start using it for days, weeks, it just becomes, it's really hard to go back, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anyways, so yeah, we have one more topic for you guys, and it's going to be kind of about what we're doing in our, I guess, like exercise and dieting
Mm-hmm.
lifestyles. Like, personally, you and I, right? Like, what do we like eat? What kind of exercise do we do? And like, how do we try to maintain being healthy? And what is health to us? You know.
Mm-hmm.
So give me 1 second because my Surface is about to die, so I need to plug it in. So I need to grab the plug really quickly, guys. 1 second.
That's a funny plug. So, oh, that's funny.
Okay, and we should be back. Okay. So sorry for that little interruption, but our last topic is going to be kind of like health and fitness and what we do personally in those regards.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you go ahead and start off with, I don't know, what is your daily routine in terms of trying to maintain your health?
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I'm significantly older than my brother, and so I really think for a person's health, it also you have to factor in the age as well, because if you're in your young 20s, if you're a guy, you could bulk up, so a lot of your health is getting stronger and bigger. Okay, but for myself, I primarily focus on my cardio, and so I really enjoy running. And so typically for myself, I'm a more of a morning person. I wasn't before, but I'm more of a morning person. So if I could get up anywhere from 4 to 6 in the morning, which is normally the time I get up, I'll go running. That's the first and foremost. And I'm not a big breakfast person. However, what I like to do is after I run, I do like to have an egg. Egg is probably, if I remember correctly, it's the perfect protein. An egg is the perfect protein. That's why so many people who bodybuild and stuff do the whole egg thing. Okay, but also I'm a huge lover of fruits and vegetables, and so I love eating salads. And so a lot of my diet is primarily when it comes to food, I eat more light foods. Okay, I rarely eat greasy food, and especially fast food. Fast food maybe I only have once a month, and the funny thing is, this is the weird thing. As you do try to eat healthier, and as you're exercising regularly, the weird thing is, if you eat anything that's unhealthy, you could feel it. Like if I eat a Big Mac, 30 minutes later, I feel like crap. And so that's my routine. I like to get up early. I love to do cardio, fruits and vegetables, and then at the same time, I really enjoy getting a lot of sleep. And
Right.
so, for me, normally I'll get about anywhere from normally 7 to 8 hours regularly, and I try to drink as much water as possible. And I rarely drink any carbonated drinks. Most of mine it's either water, cranberry juice, or something juice related. Okay, and so that's a really simple thing. I don't
Right.
do as much strength training. If I do, it's primarily to keep in shape. Whether that would be push-ups. 60 to 100. Most of the time, it's about 100 push-ups, or strengthening through bands and stuff. So I don't do as much of the bulking. I did when I was younger, but now it's more like a maintenance thing. So that's primarily my health. So very simple for myself.
So what was your health like before, I guess, you started to make these changes, and how did you get to where you are today? Like, what things influenced you to have the
Oh.
diet that you have and start doing the exercise that you're doing today?
Oh, okay. Well, for me personally, I used to drink a lot of alcohol, and I used to not get good sleep, and every now and then I would smoke, and I ate really bad, a lot of fast food stuff like that. And so what really motivated me was that I just started feeling like crap. I had less energy. Um, I wasn't motivated to do a lot of things. And then thinking of the financial side, if you love alcohol and cigarettes, you love spending money. In terms of you don't like having a lot of money in your pocket, and so anybody who works in the corporate arena, they can relate with this. You would have happy hour, right? And especially if you live in a big city, you might be stuck in traffic for 3 hours. So a lot of people wouldn't go home right away. They would go to a bar or something, And so if you add that up every day, the drinking, the bad food, you're gonna be spending a lot of money. And so what really motivated me was first physically, I just wasn't feeling good, and I wasn't motivated as well. And so it's a combination of both physical and emotional. And then on the financial side, you don't really think about it when you're spending it every day, but over a course of a month, you're spending more than $1,000 normally. And I'm talking about the average. You go out and eat and drink about $20, $30 a day. That adds up. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you first started, like the routine you have today, it didn't really start that way the first day
No.
you did it. So, like, how did it progress? That, like, what things did you figure out along the way, and things that started making sense to you?
Yeah, a lot of people, if they want to do things with health nowadays, they primarily go to the internet first. Okay, for me, that really wasn't the case. It was more like, well, what made my body feel worse? I had to prioritize that. And so what made my body feel the worst was drinking alcohol. And so that's the first thing I started. It was the hardest thing because I was an avid drinker. I was a regular drinker. I wasn't an alcoholic or anything, but as most people can relate, when you get into a habit, especially when it comes to alcohol or smoking, it's just normal. You don't even think about it. And so you just do it
It's a
regularly.
psychological thing, and I think it's pretty common. And when you put it in a certain scenario, like your brain just feels like the need to do it, right? Like
Yeah. But your
smoking.
body's
Yeah,
also addicted to it as
yeah,
well.
dependent to it. Yeah,
Yeah,
right,
it's
right, right.
dependent, and so it was very, very difficult to stop drinking alcohol. And if anything, it took me like more than a year to completely. That was very difficult. So that was the first thing. I had to stop that, and then my eating habits. That was very difficult as well. But I think the most difficult, if you're smoking or drinking, I think for a lot of people that's the hardest. It just is. I mean, it's just very addictive. Your body's used to it. The way you feel, especially, a lot of people feel a lot better when they drink, or they're more loose. And the same thing with cigarettes. You just feel better for the short term, not afterwards. And so the alcohol and then my eating habits, those were the hardest, and those took a long time. So for me, I'm that type of person where I like to take action on stuff, but in order for me to make it a habit, it's like I have to take small steps. It's
Right,
it's hard for me to take huge leaps, and every time that I have, it would end up worse. It's
right.
kind of like those people go on diets. They'll lose like a whole bunch of weight, but then they'll gain more than that. Because they went too fast. So
Right.
anyway, that's kind of my progression. I had to take baby steps. It was very difficult.
So in terms of like disciplining yourself, what do you
Hmm.
think was like the best thing that you did to, I guess, force yourself to do this? Is it
Hmm.
like the realization that your body just can't take it anymore?
Yeah, I mean that was the biggest motivator for me. Is because I actually felt it. And anybody who is older, beyond their 20s, they can relate with this. After a certain point, your body, it just will tell you that it just can't handle it. And it'll let you know. But for a lot of people, even if they know this is happening, they're just so used to it. Then at some point, their health just deteriorates really quickly. And so anybody who's getting older, it just kind of happens naturally. And so that's what happened to me. It just kept getting worse and worse. So anybody who drinks, you understand this. If you've ever been hungover, which a lot of people who drink they have, imagine like instead of being hungover for a few hours or a day, being hungover for 3 or 4 days. Okay, and so that when it happens consistently and you can't sleep and you're in pain, you're gonna do it. you know, because you have to. And so that's kind of what it was for me. For me, it was my body telling me, and then my pocketbook. So those two things combined, that kind of forced me to, you know. And like I said, I did it slowly but surely. You know, I drank like maybe one less. I went out and drank one less per week. You know, so it was a gradual thing. So.
Okay. And in terms of like keeping on it, so I know that was quite a while for you. You know, what things do you think about that you're conscious about daily that make you want to keep doing it? Do you find any difficulties with like trying to maintain, or you see any obstacles in your way that really inhibit you?
Yeah, I think for everybody who's making this lifestyle transition, it's physical because that's immediate, but then the harder long term thing is the mental and emotional part. That is very, very difficult. That's why so many people, it's hard for them to make this change, or they never quit, because once the physical is done, well, let me give you an example. For a lot of people, if they're going out to eat, or they're going to a social setting like a bar or a club or restaurant, so many other people are drinking. And you're new to that. It's a cultural thing, right? And so that feels extremely odd and terrifying when you're first doing it. I remember when I went to a bar and I didn't drink, I felt really weird. And then when I went to a club, that was even worse. And this is when I was younger, of course. I felt really, really weird. You feel very uncomfortable. Place, right? Yeah, but then you realize that as you do this more often, then you realize that alcohol or whatever you're doing, it's a crutch, you know? But then at the same time, you're sober, and so you're seeing how much of a...
Everyone acts normally.
Yeah, like, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you're like, whoa.
Like a different lens on it. Like, this is what I really did.
Exactly. You know, like, did I really act like that? And so, but that takes a lot of time. And then as you progress over time, maybe those types of activities aren't something that you really enjoyed. You only enjoyed it because you had that alcohol or cigarettes or whatever it is, you know? So I think the mental and emotional part, that is harder for the long term, because it's really hard to keep that up, you know? So, right. And you still relapse every now and then, you know, like say like you go to like a wedding or something, you know, you might feel the urge, but, and I'm not saying to completely eliminate it, but as you get used to this more and more, it's not something that you need, versus before where it was something that you needed.
Right.
So
do you have any tips for people out there who maybe want to like start getting into this health thing, or?
Yeah, I would say baby steps. You know, baby steps. You know, I think that's the way that for a lot of long-term success. And I've tried both. I've tried both baby steps and then these wide gaps. And consistently, the baby steps always work better. You know, and it doesn't have to be anything significant. You know, if you are the type of person who smokes a lot, well.
Oh, wait, can I kind of pause you for a second? Yeah. So we're by no means medical experts, so please take this advice with a grain of salt. And this is just our personal anecdotes. So, you know, for anything you do, it's at your own risk. And what other legalese do we need to say to not?
No, but if you do see us as good advice, you could always donate to us. That one. We'll take that.
Anyways, we're not medical experts, so. What else do they say after that? They want to say something like, you know.
No, that's it. I mean, this is not either medical advice or financial advice.
Yeah.
You know, you do this at your own. At your own choice.
Anyway.
But going back to the whole cigarette thing, you could start with smoking one less cigarette a day. You know, something as simple as that, or maybe smoking half a cigarette instead of the whole cigarette. You know, and then if you are the type of person who drinks regularly, one less beer. You know. It's little things like that. And a lot of studies, and I've done this on myself, that typically something does not become a habit until you do it consistently for 30 days. That's normally for most people, that's how it happens. And so, so that's what my advice, just do baby steps, you know. And honestly, once you start feeling better physically, that's going to keep you wanting to do it more. And then for the long term, once you mentally and emotionally start feeling better by not doing this activity, then it becomes a lot easier. Then it just becomes normal.
Yeah, you feel bad when you don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. And you really do, because physically you feel bad, but then when it becomes habit, mentally and emotionally, you do feel bad. You're just like, oh, wow, I missed that today. Like, you know, that's my stuff. But for yourself, you work out,
Yeah.
You are on a diet, so tell us about your
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'll give like a little overview on my health, kind of pretty much from high school to where I am now.
Hmm.
So I'm pretty much in my mid 20s. So in high school, I used to skateboard a lot. And I was really skinny, really scrawny, really lanky. I weighed maybe, so I'm about like 5'7", and I probably weigh around like 110 pounds, which is really, really light. But I got a lot of cardio in just from the amount of skateboarding I did, right? So I was never a big dude. And then when I started college, you always get that freshman 15, which is, to me, it didn't really happen my freshman year, but maybe more so my sophomore and especially my junior and senior year. But I just became less active. I walked around campus less. I started driving more. I started eating a lot worse almost every day. Had bad sleeping habits due to staying up late all night and studying. And so, throughout my 4 years of college, I kind of like went up and down. At some points, I ran a lot, I did a lot of cardio in the summer, and I was in pretty good shape. But then I think when junior year hit, just the amount of work I had to do, really bad eating habits and really bad sleeping habits, I started getting more and more weight. And then my senior year, I was really bad. I was pretty chubby. My face was kind of bloated. I had like the beer belly. I mean, I turned 21 at that point, so I started drinking more beer. Um, and all that stuff started to really catch up. But I did notice my body changing a lot. In high school, I was invincible, had unlimited amounts of energy. No matter how much I got hurt, I was fine. No matter how much I fell on my skateboard, I'd always just get back up and like nothing happened. But I started noticing, as I hit 20, 21, 22, that my health, I couldn't maintain it the way it was. I wasn't by any means like super unhealthy or obese or anything, but you did just feel worse and worse and worse. And sometimes you just wake up and you have no energy, you
Hmm.
know, or it's hard to wake up in the mornings, or sometimes you just feel this malaise, you're just kind of like in this daze of like, kind of lazy, you feel unmotivated to do things. And, so it kind of like happened both emotionally and physically in terms of like what my state of health was before. Um, yeah, so I would say, by the time I was 21, 22, I was probably 100 and, I don't know, 55 pounds, quite a bit of body fat percentage, maybe like 20, 25%. And I would say, you know, I think at that point I tried a lot. I would do different types of exercises. I would try changing my eating habits up every once in a while. But those are always short term. And it feels like when I did those short term things, I didn't get a lot of results. So maybe I just stopped doing it.
Hmm.
And like you mentioned, it wasn't a habit. I would do it for a little bit and then I would just stop. I would be okay for a bit, but then I would just give up on it for whatever reason. And I would say maybe a lot of people run through this similar kind of mental process, but it's really easy to make excuses to not do something, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll go there tomorrow, or oh, I'm so tired today. I worked out, or I did work. I worked extra today. Oh, I got a test tomorrow, or whatever. And you just don't make time for it because it just isn't a priority for you. Um, Anyways, so like my first real awakening was I'm pretty sure I had a yeast overgrowth in terms of like there was and a lot of research and studies are coming out that the biome that our our intestines is and our digestive system is actually really delicate and it actually affects a lot more than we previously thought it was, and that it's still very very unknown in terms of how it affects us, but we do know that it is delicate and small bounces and changes can radically affect how you feel mentally, emotionally, physically. So just like almost all aspects of your life. um Anyways, I started getting this IBS type of system, which is like irritable bowel syndrome. So my stomach really hurt when I went to the bathroom, like really really hurt. um just in pain, like almost to the point where I'd be moaning in the public bathroom just because I hurt that bad, right? So I tried a lot of different things. I just changed my diet up. I tried eating more probiotics. I went to the doctor. I did a stool sample test, where they sampled my stool. For those who don't know what that is, it's feces,
Hmm.
poop, pretty much. And they did find that I had like a abnormal yeast count. And I was scheduled to go back, but I never went back. But anyway, so I started changing my diet up. Um, and I came across keto. And actually, I felt like I had a lot of symptoms of what they call, it's like they call it candida, which is like that yeast overgrowth where you know, you have these yeasts in your bodies that would be feeding off certain carbohydrates and sugars, and it would kind of release this toxin in your system that would make you feel bad. And a lot of people say, and probably a lot of medical professionals say, it's like a internet disease, right? You just Google it, and oh, these symptoms are so generic that almost anyone could have it, right? So you kind of like fall into that trap, and you just like start googling, and at the same time, a lot of people try to sell you products, to try to fix that specific thing. But when you don't know any better, so you don't have like any medical help, it's a lot of times it could be a scam. But eventually, I did come across this diet called keto, which is short for ketogenic, and it's actually getting more and more popular. But essentially, what it is like a high-fat, low-carb diet. So traditionally, you eat your breads and your rice and your pastas and things like that. It's very high in carbohydrates. But what keto does is you eat like a tiny, tiny amount of carbs and a lot of fat. So your body switches from carbohydrates and glucose for energy source to fat being your primary energy source. And I started doing that for quite some time, and then I noticed my symptoms got much, much better. It's even gone today. So whether it was a diet, I want to say the diet has a big part of it, because it's almost no coincidence that when I started doing this diet that my body started feeling better. And eventually I was able to reintroduce carbs back to my diet. So, like beer and pizza and all the good stuff. But ever since then, I kind of been back and forth. And so like right now I'm on a streak of keto right now. So I am doing this keto diet, and I actually prefer it a lot of times, So it's kind of like, that was my progression in terms of like, I don't know, my awakening to be more healthier, to live a more healthier lifestyle. And for anyone who's on a diet knows it is a lifestyle change. It takes in a crazy amount of discipline, because you need to adjust your daily habits to it. You need to adjust your social behaviors to it when you go out and eat. It's really hard to eat on keto. Well, not really hard, but it can be very difficult to eat on keto, because almost everything has carbs in it when you go out and eat. And then when you go out with your friends, you can't drink beer, you can't eat sugars, can't eat breads, even fruit I stay away from because the amount of sugar in there. And it's difficult. But when you have the discipline, when you have the power to say no, and tell yourself no, it's extremely powerful. And I feel like once you can say that, you can say about a lot more things in your life to really help yourself in many areas. It's discipline. When you can say no, and when you can make choices that are better for your body, as much as you don't want to do it, you will still make those choices.
And in a lot of ways, it's very similar for a lot of people. Normally, they won't make a change until, number one, it's physical. For both me and yourself, it was a physical thing that triggered it first. But then the whole long-term thing,
your body was aching too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then the long term is the mental and emotional.
Yes.
That is the harder long term thing, because a lot of people have health problems, and the physical is going to affect them first. But then they'll take lots of drugs to suppress it, but they're actually not getting better, for the long term, and so I think that's the hardest thing, when you have to get into the mental aspect of it, the emotional aspect. It's really difficult. You're right. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot, because you have to do it regularly. It's not just like a one-time thing,
Yeah, and for me, I'm not trying to be elitist or anything, but when I have the ability to say no to myself, and it makes me want to be a better person. It makes me want to make choices that I know that are going to be good for me. As much as I don't want to do it, as much as I just put it off, or I'll do it tomorrow. I guess I started thinking mentally, like I started to get upset at myself when I had to make an excuse. And to me, it just kind of became a thing of like, there's no excuses. You should just make time for it. And I think, one of the things that really like jump-started for me is prioritizing it, making it a priority, making it important. Because if it's important, you're going to make time for it, hands down. And if you say it's important, but you don't make time for it, then it's not important to you.
Yep. And I like what you said, how it leads to other areas. Like, for example, we're doing this videos, right? My brother has a lot more things to do. I produce videos every day. A lot of times I don't want to do it. But because you've built up these habits, these disciplines, it actually transfers to other areas of your life, which is something that is pretty amazing actually.
Right.
Because you've built disciplines from this to be healthier, you're actually more disciplined and you actually get more done in other areas.
Because you have more control over your
Yes.
mind and your body, and to me,
Yep.
it's hugely important. Is
It's
that
huge.
you know, in order to be the person I want to be, I need to be able to control myself. I need to be able to make the right choices for me.
Hmm.
Otherwise, like, who am I living for? I'm not living for myself. I'm living for something else. Either
Yeah.
to just like fill my time or to just get on or to get by. Um, so yeah, I mean, both like a mental thing too. Even before I started the diet, I always had this idea in mind. This is the kind of person I want to be. And so you start to make these habits and you start to prioritize the things that are important to you.
Yeah. And what I
It's
like, oh,
yeah.
yeah, it is difficult. And one of the things that I love most about doing this when you train yourself is the fact that you don't need to wait until you have pain in order to do something.
Right, right, right.
So with all these things that you're doing on a regular habit, it actually helps you avoid pain in the future, and you get more pleasure
Mhm.
out of things. I
Yeah,
think, and
yeah.
so, and
Endorphins, man, they make you feel
yeah,
good.
endorphins.
Yeah,
Endorphins are the best drug in the world,
yeah.
and you don't have to pay for it. Well, you have to pay for
With
sweat.
time, yeah,
Yeah,
time,
sweat
sweat,
equity.
dedication,
Yeah.
but
So, are you also like doing a lot more physical workouts as well, strength training and stuff like
yeah,
that?
yeah. So first, it really started with the diet. First and foremost, get that fix. I started
Mm-hmm.
feeling better, started getting better sleep, started getting more energy, and just generally feeling better about myself. And then having that ability, having that energy, allowed me to do other things with my time to make my life more fulfilling. Really, so it's almost like a really solid foundation to enable me to do a lot of other things. Um, After some time, I just started lifting. It was like, okay, because with the diet, I actually lost quite a bit of weight and body fat, almost too much. I almost got a little too skinny on that diet. Yeah, so I just started lifting regularly now, and I do a lot of cardio now, so it's good. In terms of lifting, I make time for it. I go really late, so you don't have to have like this conception of I need to go after work or I need to go. You
Mm-hmm.
go whatever hour makes sense to you, right? Whether
Yep.
it's an early morning, late night. I go around midnight,
Mm-hmm.
and I lift almost 5 to 6 times a week. So,
Yep.
and I just started. Well, again, it was one of those things where I did it for a couple months, I stopped. I did it for a couple months, I stopped. I did it for a couple months, but at the current moment, I've been really strong on it for about 5 or 6 times a week for about 2 months now, and I'm making a lot of good progress. And that's a great thing to see too. Is like you make progress in your own life and your own careers, and you can kind of measure it and see it and be aware of it. But when you make physical progress, you actually see it, like day to day, right? So it's also another very satisfying, fulfilling thing for
And
me.
being geeks, we've always had this horrible stereotype of being somebody who's completely obese, who doesn't eat well, who doesn't sleep well, and that's still the norm
Mountain
for a lot of
Dew,
geeks.
Doritos.
Yeah, but it's actually changing, and I think more and more geeks out there, they're realizing that their health is extremely important,
Mhm.
and at the same time, as you do get older, I just want to keep mentioning that things that you used to take for granted, it really affects you later on,
Yeah.
and one of the biggest things is your energy levels,
Hmm.
and so if you build up all these habits, like my brother, he's built it when he's younger, he'll be a lot better off when he's past his 30s, his 40s and 50s,
Yeah,
because
that's the goal.
yeah,
I
yeah. So and
mean,
yeah,
even when you feel like depletions in your energy level in your early 20s, it's a real thing.
it is.
Yeah,
It is. It's a real thing, and it kind of
super
creeps up on you.
scary.
Yesterday you were able to sleep for 2 hours and go hardcore,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the next day it might take you a whole day to recover.
Mhm.
So it's a weird
And
thing.
everyone's different. Like, don't get us wrong. Some people can feel it later. Some people can probably go into their 40s and 50s and have terrible habits and still be
Yeah,
okay.
but that's not the norm, though. I mean, speaking
Yeah,
of
yeah.
somebody who's been through these different age ranges, the majority of people, they are affected as they get older, just pure and simple.
Right.
I mean, you might want to think that you could be young forever, but your body will let you
Yeah.
know. And one of the other things that, at least from my perspective, that I benefit from having, and I just want to put out something. To me, health is really, really simple. You eat better, okay? Basically, more greens, more healthier stuff, But my brother's on ketogenic. You just eat better, okay? You get activity, some type of exercise regularly, and you get good sleep and drink water. Those things are pretty much what take care of a lot of problems that
Yeah,
you have.
definitely. And I
And
want to say, you gotta do what works for you. There's no one size fits all plan. There's no one diet, one exercise
there isn't.
activity, one routine. You got to find out what works for you, and
Yeah,
it requires a lot of trial and error. But once you find it, you'll stick to it, and you'll
yeah.
know, when you find it. So
But those categories are the same throughout. You
yeah,
eat healthier, you
of
get good
course, yeah.
sleep, you get activity, and you drink water. Those are
Mhm.
usually like consistent across the board.
Right.
If you those do those two very, not two, but you do those very simple in terms of like ideas, core things, which are very hard to do regularly, you're just going to be naturally healthier for the
Right.
most part. I think that's
Yeah.
everybody
Definitely.
can agree that you get more sleep, you're going to
Yeah.
be better. Your body
Yeah.
regenerate. But one of another benefits though, if you do this like, at least I've noticed this, if you do this more than a few years, your body, your cells, your whole body. I remember reading somewhere you recreate your whole body in 5 years. You create a whole new you because your cells are regenerating. And so if you're eating healthier, you're exercising, you're doing all these good things, you actually quote unquote become younger. If you notice a lot of people, you'll notice this as you
Right.
get older. But if you
Well,
notice,
you're
for the
probably
most
like
people,
you're probably aging way less rapidly.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, because I mean, if you look at some of your friends as you get older, and if they, for the most part, I'm not saying everybody, but for the most part, if you're not taking care of your body, you're gonna look way older than somebody your same age who has been taking care of themselves.
Right.
So that's another benefit. So
There's so many benefits. I
yeah,
mean, you can't well, at this point, I don't think you can quantify like the amount of good things it'll do to you.
you can when you get older, your medical bills go up. You have to take more
Well,
medication.
there's one thing you can yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
can put
lose
us
a lot of
down.
time. You have a lot of pain.
Yeah,
It sucks. Just
yeah,
bottom line, it sucks.
yeah. Plus, I mean, it is a lifestyle change,
Yes.
and yeah, I mean, it's highly recommended.
Yeah.
Just try, and that's the biggest thing. Just start trying and figure out what works for you, because I'm sure that we've been through a lot of different, uh, you know,
Yeah. Tried a lot of
mistrials.
different
Yeah,
things.
a lot of
Yeah.
trial and error. Just so many things until we finally figured out this is working, and just keep it up
hmm
from there.
hmm And I'll go back to what I said earlier with my brother. I recommend you take baby steps because my brother's tried. You've tried the fast track thing as well, right? I mean,
I mean, for me, when I cut
mhm.
out carbs, that wasn't a baby step. That was just one day, just cut it out.
Yeah, that's not the norm though. I mean, I think for a lot of
Yeah,
people, they don't have that
but
discipline and willpower.
I had to because my
hmm
stomach just hurt. Like I couldn't wait. I couldn't take baby steps with this. So just
hmm
and the crazy thing is that it's made me learn a lot about who I am, like my body and how it works, how it functions, and essentially like if you start doing a keto diet, um, I mean technically sugar is like a natural drug, right? Like you can get
Yes.
addicted to sugar, your body can become dependent on it. And I remember when I cut out carbs for the first time, I would dream about these. I would have these food cravings at night. I would dream about bread, pizza, hot Cheetos,
Oh yeah.
and then it's really weird because and then your body also has like a physical craving for it. You go to the cafeteria, you're like, oh man, I really want this. I really want
Yeah.
to eat this macaroni and cheese.
Even
Imagine being
even the smells.
but being on this diet for so long, and now I have like no craving whatsoever for sugar.
Yep.
It's really different than it was before. Like I don't need to eat sweets. I don't need to drink soda or anything. It's just I'm
Yep.
fine, and like my diet works for me, and I rarely have cravings anymore of stuff, like of carby foods like pizza and beer. I
hmm
mean, my friends will have it and like, ooh, I'm kind of tempted. I really wanted some ice cream yesterday, but my body just feels different. My body reacted differently to it. It was more of a mental thing, I think.
Exactly. Because
Or like, oh man, like my tongue will start salivating, like, oh
yeah.
yeah, ice cream. But
And I use that same example of me
yeah,
with the whole alcohol thing.
uh,
When you used to go to a bar, and you're like, oh, your body's like mentally you telling you got
yeah,
to do it. But then now it's not like that.
yeah. It's like,
It's
I mean,
just
maybe for like a split second, like, yeah, it'd be nice,
yeah,
but then like, nah. Then you just say
yeah,
no, and it's just like
yeah. And it's
that
just a
easy.
lot easier at that point. You're in control of it. Whereas
Yeah,
before, you really felt like you didn't. You kind of had to. It's compulsory.
hmm
And so
right.
yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, it's just kind of like a slice into our personal health, fitness,
hmm
and and we swear by it. You know, one of the most important things that we've done to ourselves in the past, you know, couple years, like hands down.
Yeah.
So if you guys just start thinking about it, you know, like you said, I mean, do what works for you. Whether it's baby steps, whether it's cold turkey,
Mm-hmm.
just trial error, and the most important thing is to keep trying. But be safe about it. Be smart about it. Don't do anything stupid. And you know, this is not professional medical advice by any means,
It's geek
but
advice.
it is geek advice. But it's from one geek to another geek. So,
Mm-hmm.
yep. Anyways, yeah. So, you know, maybe in the future we can still talk about a little bit more. Just like touch on some, you know, maybe stuff like good habits within a diet. Like I don't know, like maybe some dish that you started making
Yeah.
it's really easy to make, or you know, maybe some like
And who knows,
maybe some
my
lifting
brother
techniques.
he might make more cooking videos with flavors.
Yeah,
You know, like healthy
yeah,
way to
yeah.
sous your food.
Mhm. And again, I mean, I keep going back to like find out what works for you because to me, being healthy, what people think is like healthy is almost could sometimes be subjective, right? Like you stay away from greasy things and like fatty things, but to me, that's all I eat, right? Because of this diet. But at the same time, you know, I feel like, you know, fat gets a really bad rep. It's been demonized in the past. And I think more and more research is starting to come out saying fat is not the issue. It's when you have fat and carbohydrates
Yeah.
together that is
But
like
it
the
really
bad thing.
depends. I mean, you know, you have to do your own research. It really depends on what it
Right.
is.
Yeah.
You
Do your
know, I
own
mean,
research,
hmm
ask your doctor, again, trial and error,
hmm
what works for you, right? Just because I do this keto diet doesn't mean it's going to work for you, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, so that's a small slice into our health and fitness slice. Do you guys like it? You know, I mean, sure, we can talk more about it because we love it, you know, and we swear by it. So
Yeah, I feel great because
yeah,
of it. I mean,
feel great,
you just can't get any better. That's
right?
priceless. When you feel actually really great, you
Mhm.
feel great. You know, so
Physically,
hmm
mentally, you know, you got to have everything in balance, right? So, all right. Anyways, I think that's gonna be it for our show today. So, you know, thank you guys for tuning in this far. If you have any questions, comments, let us know. Any topics you want us to talk about, let us know. Any movies you want us to watch, let us know. We love your feedback, and you know, we want to cater to you guys and make that kind of content that you guys love. So, hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, this is going to be Possibilities signing out.
C64.
All right, have a good one, guys.
All right, see you in the next episode.